Artlist.io.
Hello and welcome back to another social discussion episode, or I don't know what we're calling this. Probably we'll start a separate political series just so we don't intertwine, various messages and things that we want to try and do. But this will be a semi-regular. We're still trying to figure that out, but this will be a regular segment because politics spins my wheels. What can I say? I've just lost my pen, but whatever. Politics spins my wheels. There are people amongst us, and I bless you, that just groan the second they hear a political statement at the dinner table. And I respect your opinion and your ability to groan at such statements, but personally I love it. Because it is probably the best mechanism we do have for governance. Later I will argue another one, but we'll get to that anyway. So we've got an election coming up here this is currently New Zealand for anyone overseas watching. It's been a wild ride. We've had people stepping down, we've had people stepping up, it's been a royal shift around. A couple of political suicides, which we can talk about briefly, and yeah, if there was one word I'd use to describe this build up to this current election, it would be prickly. I think, yeah, it's been very feisty, it's been very fighty, it's been, not very conducive to progress, put it that way. But anyway, let's start with the leaders' debates. And I watched a highlight reel of the One News one, and I watched the full News Hub one, and the Minor Party as well. But straight off the bat, I think both struggled to demonstrate their convictions well. And I really think Nationals forgot they're on the left. Nationals forgotten they're on the right. Like, where were the right's supposed to be about building things and empowering people to build things, build stuff. Labour's job is to pick up the pieces after we've smashed a whole lot of stuff together, and this is supposed to be about the losers in that process, basically. And I don't see in National's plan or anything too many smart ideas about trying to actually hone in on what New Zealand does. It's not like, okay, if you said microchips, you'd be like, I know a place, Taiwan, and smashing it for various reasons. We've had our niche of dairy for so long, but I feel like we've hit that sort of plateau. And if anything, there is a very strong argument to reduce our output of dairy due to environmental and everything like that. It's like, okay, can we find and fund a new, more environmentally friendly niche that isn't going to wreck a whole heap of other things on the way through? Like our film industry. We've got a film industry that is amazing, and I reckon the government could have a better... I mean, they've got the platform to advertise that. They're talking to... everyone does generally listen when a leader of a country speaks, for good, for worse, whatever. So, I was really waiting for National to be like, okay, here's a niche that we're really good at. Let's put some investment in here. Let's build some things around it. Let's get this going. Let's talk about and try and entice some work here and upskill people here to do that. And, and I'm not saying it has to be film. I'm just saying, we're an innovative bunch on these couple of islands, and, we've got the Rocket Labs doing amazing things. We've got all these innovative things that we could be pushing, and surely I think everyone's becoming aware that our reliance on dairy has been way over, like that horse has been flogged, like well flogged, mate. And if you ever want to swim in the river in the next 50 years, maybe we should give that horse a bit of, maybe a shot of antibiotics and a bit of a rest, That's all I'm saying. But anyway, I digress wickedly. So, yeah, both leaders struggled to demonstrate conviction. They both spoke reasonably well. I mean, it was still very tit for tat. It's like, and I always know in an argument, the minute someone goes personal or has a dig, they've essentially lost any argument. Because it's like you haven't thought about your viewpoint long enough to refine it to where you can win an argument. You know, if you can't refine your viewpoint down to a 30-second or a minute at a stretch, then you probably don't know your argument well enough or your idea well enough. Like a business idea that can't be transferred on a napkin is probably so complex and overcooked that it will never get off the ground. So, I think there needs to be way more thought put into what they actually stand for and why they're doing the things they're doing. It's like, okay, we want to do this for X, Y, Z. Done. And then people know. It's not like that guy's an idiot, vote for me. Oh no, that guy's an idiot, vote for me. It's like, oh, well, okay, right now you're both looking like muppets because you haven't put the thought and effort in and respected my time to present your ideas well. End of story. That's the bottom line, people. So if Lux and Hipkins are watching, there you go, boys. Bit of homework. Get to it because it was painful. More painful than that, though. The minor party debate was, when I say a circus, I think that doesn't do it justice. I was waiting for a crayon to be thrown across the room. Like, it was kindergarten. It was children. I had to walk away out of frustration several times while watching that. And there was so many, there was so much, again, that guy's an idiot. It's like, well, okay, cool, but what's your idea, smartass? Why? No one could state their ideas well enough. And I mean, that is an inherent problem with TV. They have ad cuts and things to do, and general public can't hold an attention for more than an hour, it seems. So, but there are those people like me. I mean, if it was 2.5 hours, I'd watch 2.5 hours. I've watched 3-hour podcasts on multiple things. But anyway, there are that group of people that don't mind consuming large form media that I wish mainstream media allowed for. Film a 3-hour, cut it up for an hour or an hour and a half special on TV, but give us the raw form 3-hour grilling, and I will critique that and watch it 3 times, and because I just love swimming in that pond. But anyway, it's sadly very disappointing TV appearances from across the board. There was no one leader that I'm like, that guy's got it half together, And I wish the minor, and then there's the micro. I wish the micro parties got something, got something more than a Facebook and Instagram ad, because there is some real gold nuggets down the bottom there, Raf Manji from the top party. There's a couple of I know New Zealand have some ideas, but they're worth hearing. I just want full representation. I really do believe in full representation. I mean, and we, to a degree. Okay, I'm gonna preface that. And if the Jono and Ben party suddenly appear, and it's a bit of a joke, I don't want people making jokes of our democracy and wasting our time. Stop it. The Cannabis Party, for instance, we had a referendum. Let's put it to bed, people. Put it to bed. Come on. Just cut it out. But, there's some discernment needed over that. But for most, I would like micro-party representation in electoral run-ups. And while we're talking about micros, I want to address the quite destructive sort of thoughts around the wasted vote. Oh, I'm just wasting my vote by voting for a minor party. I personally, this year, I don't know if I'll publicly state who I'm voting for, but I will tell you it's a micro party. I'm done with the main two. The other four are just disasters. I'm putting mine on an outside horse. But I hear a lot of the narrative in talking about elections and stuff is, oh, my vote's wasted if I vote for a minor. But the problem with that idea is, if everyone thinks like you, then the micro parties never become minor parties. They never become the party. Then, like, they're kind of doomed to fail right off the bat because of the way we're thinking about it. And I don't like thinking democracy is somehow strategic. You know, we had this whole thing last time where farmers were voting the Greens or some stupid idea because they thought, well, you know, it would be enough to keep Labour out. Or something like that. And it's like, oh Lord. No, that's right, they voted Labour. Farmers were convinced that National wouldn't get in, and they were, funny enough, right. So they strategically voted Labour so they would have enough, basically, to rule the House without the Greens. That's what it was. Sorry for the confusion. And it's like, and that backfired wickedly. Like, it backfired wickedly. And it's like, who were you to think you could pick the future and, you know, somehow wrangle democracy as if it's some sort of little game you can, you know, slip an extra ace into. It's just, it's essentially arrogant to think that that's the case. So, you know, I would challenge everyone that, you know, watches this is please consider micros, because the micro parties, because, yeah, if everyone thinks like, I think Top actually did some polling. He posted on his Instagram page, and it was something like, you know, would you vote Top? And it was like 2%. We're like, yeah, 100%. You aligned perfectly. And then they did another poll, literally like straight afterwards. It was like, would you vote Top if it got over the 5% threshold? And like 11% said yes. It's like, well, okay. Like, if that doesn't demonstrate the idea how that idea around the wasted vote is damaging to potentially better aligned parties that align with you, then I don't know what is. I don't know what is. Because what I think everyone is increasingly aware of is we need some fresh blood and ideas in that building. Parliament is stale. If it was a limb, you'd possibly be looking at removing it because it's dead. Like, we haven't had a fresh idea since, well, you know, yeah, I can't, honestly. This is on the spirit of the moment, but nothing springs to mind, which is just disgraceful. You know. Oh dear. Anyway, well, we digress. So yeah, there's my little spiel. I'd like to go quickly, if we may, to the National Party website. Here we go. Yeah, all this policy stuff. I mean, I've painfully read, I would say 80% of some of this and stuff. I mean, they do have some good thoughts around our school system. That is a system that has gone woefully astray under Labour and has been somewhat hijacked. And, you know, we've got common rooms now, and, you know, there's 90-odd students to 5 teachers just screaming their lungs out. It's like, you know, it's hard enough to get a room of 30 people to shut up and listen for an hour. without any major distractions, especially at that age group. You try 90. Like, just someone's only got to drop their damn pencil and everyone looks around and goes, so I'm glad that swing is. I feel like that swing's already in motion and National are kind of just catching on to it. But if they take that and run for it, hallelujah. Because our education is definitely, gone astray. I do want to touch on, I run some notes here. Here we go. Yeah, both leaders were actually surprisingly, and I'm talking about Chris Lux and Chris Hipkins, when questions about sex ed on the News Hub leaders debate. And I wish I had the clip, but I'm not that tech savvy yet, so I will basically summarize. They were basically word for word the same. That area of education should be under the guidance of the parents when the children are ready. End of. That was essentially it. I think Hipkins was a little more, we have a duty to provide clean, good, clean education, despite what the parents were, but National were very much, that's your responsibility, which is essentially on the party line. So, yeah, it was, but I was shocked at how similar they were, rather than, I was expecting Labour to essentially stick to their guns and be like, it's this way because we've made it this way, Merry Christmas. But I feel Hipkins has definitely pulled it back from the mildly communistic left that Jacinda had us on. So that was actually good to see because we were way out left there for a bit, and I'm glad that the swing's happening. I mean, we've still exposed God knows how many school-aged children to some absolutely abhorrent ideas that they should never, well, no, I'm not saying never come across. I'm not saying never. I'm saying there is a time and a place, and it is individualized to every child, and I don't think anyone can put a broad brushstroke over the lot, especially with that realm. So that was good to see. So surprisingly, on that spectrum, the two parties have tightened up, which hallelujah for that. But yeah, I mean, the rest is all basic political hoo-ha, if I was to summarise. I mean, law and order's been a massive one. They had some, restoring law and order. It's like, okay, I swear every political, literally, ACT, National, Labour, all promising 300 cops, new cops. It's like, okay, brilliant. 72 just left to the Western Territories, to receive a third more pay than you're giving them here, and that's not accounting for the exchange rate. I'm pretty sure there's a good 20 grand difference. So our first order, it's basic first aid. Stop the damn bleeding. Just stop the bleeding. Don't run off to the blood bank and find some more bags of blood. Stop the bleeding. It's assess the issue. Same with our nurses. We have a pay issue that is forcing these people, and I say forcing. No one wants to bugger off to another country. Well, there's the odd few, the odd free-spirited few, But everyone generally wants to stay around family, friends, and what they know. But if there's money, and I mean money's not everything, but in the early stage of life, you've got to get it. So, we need to stem that bleeding. Nurses, police officers, well, I'm sure we're losing a lot of our tech sector over there. We're seemingly bringing in a lot of low-end wage work type stuff, but we are losing top-end workers. And I know a nurse that was considering Aussie, and and in fact, two that I know that were considering Aussie, and I think one is gone now, actually. I need to message her and ask. But, can we at least stop the bleeding? There's no point in promising 300 new officers, more officers, essentially more officers. when we have a net negative flow out of this country. That's just stupid. You know, yeah, blows me away. They should be addressing pay equity pretty swiftly because I know our like the officers that serve the communities and stuff. They're not getting enough pay for this level of hoo ha. Absolutely not. I mean that level of hoo ha also needs to be addressed. But yeah, stop the bleeding. Stop this. We need to the brain drain. You know, we need to stem that, and it only happens. Money talks. Like there's no other way. You can call for, national pride and all that sort of hoo-ha, but money talks. So, yeah, that's what I'd say on all... Acts is basically the same. Their law and order is, a little more right, boot camps and all, but we'll get to that. So, yeah, there's nothing really... Dealing with inflation, it's like, well, that's, mate... If you think you can deal to inflation, you need to talk to an economist. Yeah, Family Boost. Family Boost is another big one that we need to be doing more to support families in this country because it's been a massive sacrifice to have a family. And as someone that wants a family, not immediately, but 10-year plan, say, I'm comfortable. Don't get me wrong, but you throw a kid in there and it's like, lordy, like, not happening, buddy. And the problem is, if you look into populations and what's going on there, we're in a pretty sticky spot. We need to start seriously. And the major countries, I think Denmark just started advertising on their national television, a Do It for Denmark campaign, basically trying to encourage having children and doing it for Denmark. So, Google it, please Google it, because I don't do it justice. But yeah, most of the developed world, I think every country bar sub-Saharan Africa around there has been net negative population for 50 odd years now. And we're only just starting to look at the figures and go, oh lordy, this is a problem. So New Zealand has a good chance to get ahead of that. We're well positioned to get ahead of that and really start incentivising parenting and having families. And we also need to have a national conversation about how to raise a child, but never mind. That's another story entirely. That's a whole podcast. So, yeah, there's that there as well. Like, we need to... This Family Boost basically doesn't go far enough. It... Oh, God, make me click on another link. You can read their plan and go over it, but it's... I don't think it goes far enough. If I was to look at... if I, purely on numbers, if I was looking at having a kid and seeing this is like, this is the benefit. And I'm not saying... finances need to play a part in the decision to have a child, 100%. But there's never a good time to have a child. So just, get on with the people. But, like, if you put this in front of me and go, well, does that sway you? It's like... No, not at all. So, anyway, but yeah, that basically national, very little highlights, no new stuff, no new ideas. Shall we move on? To Labour, who I'm traditionally national. I'm a more rightish. I'm right by nature, but I can appreciate the left. Because sometimes activities from, there's always problems that crop up through, strenuous growth or, rapid growth especially. You get a wicked set of problems that the left need to sort out, and it's by no means my cup of tea. So I appreciate the political swing, but I am by nature right-leaning. So I'll try and put my personal bias aside, but it's going to be hard. I'll try. I'll try. Stronger economy, yeah, like straight off the bat. Straight off the bat, you borrowed a lot of money, like $50 billion, and we spent that in 2 years, and I think we ran the bill to 62. 62? Don't quote me on that figure. I think we went over budget. We were spending like $2 million a week, through COVID, and I'm not saying that spending was unjustified, justified. It was a pandemic, yes, and as business owner, most of those, I think I got two of the payouts, and they definitely saved my bacon. So I'm by no means saying that was uncalled for or anything. But yeah, they can spend some money, and it is not free money. That is a loan, and that needs to come back. And with interest rates doing what they're doing now, it's kind of punishing. Like I'm glad I didn't tack up some astronomical bill during COVID, thankfully. So yeah, like stronger economy. That's not your forte. Like I wish the left knew they were the left and focused on, like the left should be focusing on education, nutrition, like all those problems of the lower socioeconomic sector to get them further up, further up the socioeconomic ladder. Like, believe it or not, I'm actually a firm believer of school lunches. Because, and I'm not saying, I don't want to be subsidising Medbury school lunches, or Stack's school lunches, or Villa Maria school lunches. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the people that are struggling in this world, I am all for shouting free lunch. I've done it numerous times. Like, I do not see an issue because there is very, very strong data that nutrition in early life and early brain development is like dollar for dollar the best return on investment you can do. So, ACT had a go at that policy the other day. David Seymour was saying it's a waste of $24 million or whatever, and it's like, well, at this point, mate, what's 24 mil? I mean, it barely buys you an opening ceremony on a national highway. So let's just put that in perspective and go, look, dollar for dollar return on investment, lunches in early, and I'm not saying any high schools should, by the time you're out of intermediate, the game's up, people. But, that real early days, preschools, up to, like, by the time you're in, even intermediate's pushing it for me, but, like, I'm for that policy. I really am. And funny enough, if National had actually looked at numbers, it's very hard to argue against that once you look at ROI. But, anyway, I digress. Fixing cost of living. If you knew how economics worked, we're basically, this chunk of money that they've borrowed has just got to flow through the economy a few times, and everything's got to readjust. That's it. End of. You pump 50 billion in. Our population hasn't expanded quick enough to allow for that. Because everyone goes, oh, why didn't inflation, hit earlier? It's like, well, inflation's a very, very troubling, topic. Even economists, I think economists, maybe they know what it is, but sometimes I'm like, do you? But essentially, it's like the inflation. It's an inflation of the money supply, and it just has to work its way through because everything has intrinsic value, which floats to the dollar. So, it's just got to work its way through the system. I don't think interest rates to combat inflation was actually a Kiwi economist. I've forgotten his name escapes me. But it is essentially a New Zealand principle. Which a lot of people don't know. It's not Arcanian or anything, economics. It's purely, and I don't think I don't believe in it. But what do I know? What do I know? meeting the climate challenge, I mean, that is definitely something we need to look at. Um, and the left is definitely the party to do it. But there's a whole debate around climate change and what that science is. And I mean, it's gotten. I'm going to make a controversial call here, but it's nothing to do with carbon. Like, can I just say that out loud? It's got nothing to do with carbon. It has everything to do with entropy and the first law of physics. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Done. What do we have driving around every day? 1.5 billion hot air pumps, essentially. You know, like your car might not matter and my car might not matter, but 1.5 billion of them at an average of, let's say, 80 horsepower, and a petrol engine is only good for like 30% heat efficiency. So you're losing, a good chunk of that to heat. Like, is it any surprise that Industrial Revolution was, 70 years, no, more than that. Yeah, 70 years ago. Even pre that, no, it'd be 80 odd years. Let's say, okay, cars been doing that for 50 years. It's simple maths, people. Things heat up if you run that many heaters for that long. Like, stop it. Stop it, people. But I am also angry at anyone pushing the whole, it's carbon in the atmosphere, hoo-ha. Like, it's pretty obvious that carbon saturation can be met with plants. Plants love that stuff and they'll mop it up all day long. You know, like, they'll adjust, they'll get bigger growth rates, and you look at pine tree rings, the expansion, back in the day, breedings and there's other variables. I'm not saying this is the only thing, but you look at pine tree rings and how they much expand. In modern times, they're just like leaping forward, and it's due to the basic building block of everything on the planet, carbon being in the atmosphere and it being soaked up. So, yeah, anyway, don't get me started on that. The problem is it's far easier to tax carbon than actual heat emissions, because if we really looked at it, yeah, people wouldn't be driving. I mean, it'd be if everyone we went like the Philippines and we all just drove scooters. How about that? I love a nifty 50. They terrify me. I mean, in Bali they're amazing, but here anyway, don't get me started. So, building up our health system, we've already talked about that. We need to retain nurses, and they do actually talk in there about retaining nurses, which is good, and they're halfway through doing a deal. In fact, I think they've now pulled that deal off with the nurses. Thank you very much. It's much of a market. Working in partnership with Murray. Now, that is a clear difference between National and Labour, and it's one that is very tricky topic to talk about, but I'll give it a go. Working with Murray, essentially what they say in there is improving their integration, well-being, it's like Maori solutions for Maori problems, essentially, which is the premise of co-governance, which for me goes a little far, but I think the biggest problem, I'll say it here now, is that co-governance will be so complex that nothing will get done. Like, our system is already very complex. You want to add another a complementary system, we'll die. We'll be writing our last will and testimony before we see anything happen of meaningful substance. Like, it'll be I get it. Like, it's a beautiful idea. But, that doesn't make reality, sadly. And we need to be worried about efficiency as well. And it's a constant, there's a constant battle between the two. And that battle needs to happen, but I don't think I don't think co-governance is the way to do that. Essentially, is what I'm saying. I do, however, believe that the Māoridom has way superior beliefs around holistic health and holistic learning, and a few other things, and around community and all that sort of stuff. And I think if they could emphasize that more and condense their views to where it's sellable and pitchable in an elevator, then that could go far. Like, that could go far, and especially in the wake of this sort of anti-capitalism, I'm just a slave to late-stage capitalism type vibe. That's really appealing. Like, 100%, it's appealing, and it needs to be encouraged and celebrated. Like, it might not be widely known, but I was in the whānau class at Hamilton High School, and just because I liked their ideas around how they viewed a human, rather than the capitalistic, if I can get $1 out of you, Merry Christmas. Whereas they're like, well, is that good for you? Is that good for me? Like, is this good for our spirits? Is this good? Like, they have those 4 pillars of that hold up everything. And, I didn't anticipate going down this track, and I'm not completely prepared, but that's what I would say is, that's what I will say. So, yeah, there's that, and that. That's basically the highlights package of Labour. Oh, and we can't move on without talking about GST on fruit and vegetables. Now, I don't know how much understanding of the GST system you have, but essentially it's a tax on a tax, which is what I'll say straight off the bat, because you're essentially getting taxed on taxed income, which, unless you have a GST number and then you're a business, it is a very hard system to get your head around. Trust me, it took me years with the business and doing everything. Removing it off items without going across the board is, it's going to be hard. It's going to be very, very hard to make that stick. Especially when you've got stores selling multiple items that don't qualify and some do. And then you've even got, like, okay, fresh fruit and veg. Brilliant. So is that, like, frozens? Like, does that cover frozens? And, that reporter, I've forgotten his name, I think it was Lloyd Bird, did a very good job of, like, holding up individual items and being like, what about this? What about this? Like, strawberries, which are essentially a luxury item these days. Do you need them for your health and well-being? Probably not. Are they fun to dip in chocolate and eat? Yep. Do you deserve to get the GST back? No. Probably not. I just don't think, did anyone think out the logistics? Like, are they compelled by law to have, like, the logistics of their policies thought through before they open their mouth? Like, is that a thing? Or that should be a thing? Vote me and I'll bring it in next week. Oh, Lord. Yeah, no, the people I've talked to, including some accountants, my accountant, a few economists, we're going to lose a lot of the gain through administration and oversight. And you're only talking about a 15%, like, the way I'd love to see it going is businesses that only sell fresh produce, such as small market gardeners and farming blocks and all the Marsham's Road and those little out of the way places, like Crazy Dave's and places like that only sell. It's like you just give them an exemption across the board. But they can't even have so much as chewing gum in their store because, like, that's that. And they get basically across the board of the GST exempt. Their business activities they get a rebate on. And that's that. Like, we won't send you a GST bill. Send us one, though, because your businesses shouldn't, it's not a goods and service tax, is it? It's, that's a activity of business. Because then it's like, how far back does that GST get traced as well? Because, like, are we going to wipe the GST off the tractor fuel to produce the damn thing? Or, like, it starts getting a wee bit weird. But one way I do, and it would break our monopoly as well, which is I'm all for. So, and you encourage small micro growers that, are very, there's no like food chain of people behind them. There's a mum and dad, a tractor, probably a dog, 2 kids, and some fertilizer and seed guy selling them all sorts of stuff. So it's very like localized, and we're not funding overseas corporates or anything like that. It stays right here in NZ, and all the policing you have to do is walk into the shop and make sure there's not one damn item outside of their jurisdiction. Like chewing gum, all that silly stuff by the counter, bugger that. It's like, you sell fresh fruit and veg, end of. And I wouldn't even be unopposed to them selling other essentials like milk and bread under that structure as well. I think that would be a very strong way of breaking up that monopoly and incentivizing people to vote with their wallets and legs and get down to a local grower. That's how I'd love to see that policy roll out. And I think that could work, because it's very simple. The oversight's low, the accountancy is just way simpler, and it encourages real people in this country that slog their absolute, that like, it's a hard life growing veggie, especially if you're in the Hawke's Bay or some place that's had weather issues. It's a hard life, and if they can get a small help from everyone around and an incentivized structure to bring people through their door, I'm all for it. So that's what I will say about the GST policy. I was very critical of it at first, but I've put a lot of thought into that, and I think that's the only way it can play out, and I would love to see that play out. So the last people I'm going to talk about, I mean, I've talked about micro parties and all that stuff, but I don't have time for an hour to sit here and chat, even though it's been 43 minutes. But the last one I'll look at is ACT, our favourite racist. No, I take that back. I was an ACT voter. And it was due to the gun laws and their response to that after the March terrorist attack. They had a more closely aligned view to me, so hence why I voted for him. But I've since had personal experience with David Seymour, which I in fact I will share here, because like it's an accurate reflection of the guy. And so yeah, I went to the political lunch, which, to be honest, is just a bunch of business dudes having a lunch and a catch-up, and some guy talks for an hour in the middle. Like, I went to the Christopher Luxon one and the ACT one, and yeah. Oh, to think that is anything but a social gathering is very optimistic. But anyway, so we're at the ACT lunch, and it's all going lovely and well. They had he spoke reasonably well, but then they had an open question, and this was last year, I think. Last year, yeah, I think it was last year or earlier this year. And they had a couple of questions, and it was all pretty vanilla stuff. Then a a business owner who I know, and I won't name, but I know him. He's good man. Stood up and asked a question around the World Economic Forum, Agenda 21, I think it was, and just the amount of influence that has on the government. Which essentially is a fair question. There's a few hot words in there. There was a few, fringe stuff. But David Seymour didn't even let him finish the question for a start. He shut him down, basically called him an idiot, said the government doesn't know how, the government doesn't work that way, and, what the hell do you know because you're not in there, and was pretty personal and rude to the point where this man got up, his whole table got up, and walked out of the room, and basically said, we're out of here. Which, to be fair, I probably would have done the same if he had addressed me like that. But it really, threw me for a bit. And the whole room was dead quiet for, that awkward silence that lingers, Yeah, it was bad, and it took, I think Dominic Harvey was actually emceeing it. Yes, he was. He was emceeing it, and it took Dom to sort of crack a joke and get the room alive to, keep people back re-engaged. So it was a shocking display of utter rudeness and disgraceful treatment for someone that is essentially a public servant. We vote you in there to represent our views, and if you can't, treat us with some dignity and respect on the way through, then what are you doing? What is going on there? And since then, I'd really struggled to like the guy. And even in the minor party, I was like, God, he'd be that kid in class reminding the teacher 2 minutes before the class ends that we had homework due. He'd be that guy. He'd be just the annoying nerd in the background going, oh, miss, have you marked the homework yet? I'm like, oh, God. And then he would cry when someone smacked him. Anyway, I don't know. They're basically where's their policies, our plan. Basically, the only one worth mentioning is wasteful spending. Good luck to you. Save for communities, basically that. Ending division, race-based politics. Yeah, that's been an interesting one for old Seymour. And he has cottoned onto something there. I think he is representing a small portion of this country, don't get me wrong, that believe that, we are catering a little bit more to one sector than the other, and rah-de-rah-de-rah. And, whether we are or we aren't, I mean, every sector has issues very specific to that group of people. And it's very, very hard to talk about them without being absolutely lambasted from here to China. But, the current ram raid on dairies and the knife attacks and everything like that, they are hitting a very, very specific group of people. And we've got the land issues, which hopefully are resolved for the most part now, but they hit a very, specific group of people. And so you do, to have a unified group, we do need to sort out issues amongst the minor and the groups, because everyone groups, there's always, and I always laugh at this, because there's that saying about group chats, and it's like, if you're the one in the group chat that doesn't think that there's another group chat outside of this without a few people missing, then you're that person. Basically, it's like there's always a subgroup of a group chat where they talk shit about the other people. So, it's like there's always subgroups and groups, and we need to fix, solutions to their problems, and they have very specific problems. Like there's health implications, there's all sorts of stuff going on, above and beyond a little bit of name calling and racism. I think that just is just something, I've never faced it, to be fair, but I have been called numerous of things. And it's like, well, if it's untrue, it's untrue, and you move on. Like, what of it? What of it? But yeah, they've really got, apart from that, they haven't got too much else. World-class education system. Well, we were there once. Hopefully we can get back there. Supporting rural New Zealand, I'm all for that. Easing the tax burden on... is it so hard to CPI the tax brackets, people? Yes, you'll have a little less money to play with, but by God, you'll spend it better, hopefully. And do they cover their boot camp policy? It might be under this one. It's boot camps are not like the data. If you read any data on boot camps and what they do and how they do it and all that sort of hoo-ha, not great at all. You just connect people, antisocial males with antisocial males, and those antisocial males form a pack, and then they're off to the races 10 times stronger and a bit faster, and they've done 50 laps of a football field so they can run a fucking mile. It doesn't work out well. What I'd like to see is these young people that want to drive a Demio through any mildly functioning business is, basically from the day they earn $1, they'll have an IRD number. Can we not just assign them an IRD number so that it's outside of basically the justice system? Because, obviously the parents need to clip around the ear and ask what the hell's going on. But, there needs to be some repercussions, and sometimes throwing them in a cell with various other like-minded people, especially at that young, impressionable age, does not set them on a path well. But, it's very hard to see how we can get around this. Essentially, the driver of crime is and what these young people are looking at is a housing market that's well cooked. Well cooked. Like, $100,000 at that age as a deposit and more, like 125 to 50, you need to, and you're sitting into a minimum wage job that's 22, not going to happen. Not going to happen unless they learn compounding and upskilling real quick. But that's a slog. Like, there's no more being a humble truck driver and owning a house. That died probably 5 years ago, or probably died just before COVID and everything went wild. There's from this day forth, no one earning, under, even 80 grand's not much. But these kids are just looking at the future and going, well, that's like a lot of, that's beyond the reasonable amount of work for me to get ahead. There's a reasonable amount of work. There's some of us that like to whip ourselves stupid and work till, midnight. Welcome to midnight. But, there's also people that's not the life for them, and that's fine. 100%, it's fine. They should be able to have a house to call their own, food in their stomachs, the odd holiday, and that's that. But that is by far a dead dream, sadly. So, yeah, they're looking at the future and going, well, I'm just going to flip the Monopoly board. It's that classic game of family Monopoly where your younger brother's, run out of money. He's maybe pulled some stupid moves, but Monopoly's really not about... There's no clean way. Statistically, there's no clean, winnable method. It's luck of the dice, essentially. But it replicates life also pretty well. And then there's always that time where, youngest brother's already run out of money once, mum's given him a loan, he's spanked that on something silly. One of his oldest brothers talked him out of an asset that he probably shouldn't have sold, and he's just glowing red hot. Red hot. And then he lands on someone's motel and he just lets rip. He just lets rip. Flips the board and just turns the whole place into chaos. And then the finger pointing starts, and oh god. And if you think I'm speaking from personal experience, it's because I am. But, essentially, every one of the young people of today are essentially that young brother who's, looking at the game going, holy heck, this is just no fun anymore. Oh, what is fun? Stealing a car and ploughing it through a building. Wow, perfect. We're at the stage now where young people would rather flip the board than play the game. There's your problem. How you solve that? That's another hour 50 talking about that alone, but that's your driver of crime. The building into the future is harder than just tearing it up. They think they'll get further by just tearing it down and starting again. And that generation has been born. And we're seeing it. We're seeing the flow-on effect of that generation. And it will only get worse, people. I'm not optimistic on that front at all, until we sort out our economic issues that incentivise fair and steady work for progression in life. But, that is a problem that I could unravel for well over an hour. But anyway, that's going to wrap my political summary up. I mean, it's my thoughts and opinions are only that. I'm open to new information, though, as always. And hopefully that's, brought some value to you. It's only my thoughts and opinions, but the things I would emphasise to close is definitely reconsider your thoughts about wasted votes. We need micro parties making it to minor party status. There's some good ideas locked out there that need better representation. That's basically what the only thing I'd bring up again. But thank you for listening. I know this has been a long one, but I hope it's been fun. It's definitely been fun for me. It really does spin my wheels and stuff. So, again, thanks for watching. And if you did make it to the end, please tell me. So I'm not just rambling to no one. But thanks again. And we've got a live event on the 26th of October. That's at Crafted Coffee on Blenheim Road, 121 Blenheim Road. There is a ticketed event, so please check out our Facebook page. That has all the links and relevant information. So thank you very much for your time. And if you do want to get to the live event, Facebook's the place to be. All right. Thank you.
Artlist.io